Welcome back to another episode of the Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst, and today's guest is dating coach Blaine Anderson, also known as @Dating by Blaine on social media. And as you know, dating can be quite challenging in the online and offline world that we live in today. I was highly impressed with Blaine's direct and no nonsense advice on social media, and I got a lot of value out of her content, and I think you are going to learn a ton in this conversation. And while Blaine specifically coaches men, we get into both perspectives in our discussion, so I know you will enjoy it whether you are a male or a female. So get your pen and paper ready as you tune into this dating masterclass. So let's get this conversation going and welcome Blaine Anderson to the Adversity Advantage podcast. Blaine, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm pumped. I was telling you before we recorded that we have a mutual friend in Trip Kramer, and I happened to just DM him, and I was like, hey, man, I'm looking to talk a little bit about relationships and dating and stuff because I get asked questions a lot, either through social media or just people who come across my content or just in person, and I'm no expert. I'm a 34-year-old bachelor who's never been married. And I asked him, I said, man, most of my audience is women, but I do have 35% or so of my listeners are men. And so I told him I wanted to have more conversations like that. And he gave me some suggestions. And as I started to follow these people on TikTok, all of a sudden, all these dating coaches started popping up in my TikTok feed, of course. And you were one of them. And I reached out. I love your non BS advice. And I think it's super fascinating that you are a female who coaches only men. And I think to start, as I was polling my audience and as I was asking some friends on what they would want to know from talking to you, one of the common things I got was why. Why are we in this place where people now have to hire a coach to walk them through how to date? What are some of the biggest struggles you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I'd like to start off by saying dating isn't intuitive for most people, especially in 2022, where you have online dating and building profiles to market yourself and texting and FaceTime and a pandemic. It's not as simple as it once was. I know I didn't date in the 70s or 80s, but it feels like it would have been simpler without all those added layers and considerations. So most of the men who come to me, they just aren't satisfied with their love lives. They aren't getting as many dates as they want. They aren't dating the quality of women they want. They don't feel like their dating life is where they want it to be. So I help them identify why that is and get it on track.
Right. It's funny. You say you thought it might have been easier to date without technology. And I can definitely understand and see why you'd say that. For me, I'm like, man, it means I'd have to go up to somebody in public, meet them in the frozen vegetables aisle at the
It was
grocery store.
simpler. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
easier. It was simpler.
Right. So as far as the struggles that men are finding specifically with meeting women, like you say that they haven't found the right person, they're having trouble finding quality women, they're having trouble connecting the dots. What exactly, specifically as far as quality, as far as the types of women they're looking for, what is it that they're searching for that they can't seem to find on their own?
Yeah, well, I think that's different for every guy. Not every single man is looking for the same type of woman, but most of my clients and most of the men who I work with, they're looking really two things. Some of them are just looking to go on more dates with more women, feel more confident in their love lives. Most of them are ultimately at some point looking for that long-term partner, whether that's marriage or just long-term companionship. That is most of their ultimate goals. But then what that means for them, what they're looking for in the partner is obviously different for every single person.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would say that generically, most people that are coming to you and are on these dating apps, at some point they're looking for marriage or some form of long-term partnership. And with that said, what types of questions do you ask these guys to really get a better understanding of the types of women that they're looking for?
Well, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. You're going to take the same steps no matter what type of woman you're looking for because, you want to market yourself. You want to put yourself out there, be the best version of yourself so women can see that. And ultimately, whether you're looking for, XYZ type of woman or ABC type of woman, they could be totally different. You are going to take the same steps. You might meet them in different places, but you're going to have the same sort of ladder to follow and to get there.
Right. Because I think at the end of the day, like it's all about like unpacking like the individual values and preferences for each person and figuring out then, okay, how can I take what I've learned about myself and then also as you as a coach about that person and help guide them like towards where they would find the match that they're looking for, right?
So yeah, I focus more on like the individual or the man than the woman that they want to find. So the biggest challenge that I see for a lot of the men I work with is they just don't have a clear understanding of how to market themselves. So they have a lot going for them. So, most of my clients are hardworking professionals. They're smart guys. They have good friends. They have a nice family life, but they aren't being like, I liked the words that you used before. They aren't able to connect the dots to market that to the women that they are interested in. So it's not that they need to change themselves. I say this all the time. Dating is a marketing problem, not a product problem for the vast majority of men. You shouldn't be going, okay, how do I change myself to be more attractive to women? That's not one, that likely isn't going to make you have a successful dating life. And two, you're not going to be happy if you're not being your authentic self. It's just, okay, how can I better communicate about myself so women can see me as a viable romantic partner?
Right. So let's do this in like a real-time example. Let's just say that I'm a client of yours and I'm coming to you. Like, what would you ask me? Like, what's my elevator pitch for what I do for work? Is that what?
Sure, that's a good place to start. So to start off, like I don't take many clients one-on-one. You first need to complete my master class, and that's really so we have a basis of how we communicate. You're coming to me with a certain level of understanding of my language and how we're going to move forward. But yeah, I would ask you, okay, just how would you describe yourself to a stranger?
To a stranger?
Or you're
Huh.
meeting somebody. You're filling out an about me section. What do you say?
I would just say that I'm an award-winning. I mean, as far as like my professional background,
Anything.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just so used to doing this professionally. It's just challenging for me. It's like I'm an award-winning personal trainer. I host a podcast that helps thousands of people. I have been in recovery from drugs for nearly 14 years. I'm an author. I've written 3 books, and then like some of my qualities, I would say, is that I'm a goofy, kind-hearted, like loving person who doesn't take life too seriously, but also like knows when to take it seriously and likes to do like the basic things. I like to travel, like to cook, like to read, like to write, like to have a good time. Family and friends is important to me. Love spending time with my dog. I mean, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. And those were all great descriptions. So you asked like how do I start off with a client? It's like I want to understand who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you happy, and then also like what are you looking for? And then from there, most importantly, where are you today? So where are you today versus where you want to be? And then connecting the dots of okay, how can we get you to where you want to be in your dating life?
Right. So I guess like where I'm at now, just to kind of like keep this going, because I think this is going to be helpful for people, is where I'm at now. I feel like I don't want to say, I don't know if the right word is emotionally unavailable. I'm pretty self-aware. I know myself like very well. I'm super committed to my business right now because the last few years were challenging for several reasons. And I'm just hyper focused on rebuilding what I had before, growing the podcast, reinvesting in myself, and organically just seeing if I find somebody along the way. Like I'm not closed off to it, but I'm not like actively looking.
I mean, that's a great answer. And I think a lot of times you end up finding somebody when you're least looking, but you probably wouldn't be coming to a dating coach being like, I'm ready to double down on my dating life right now. You're doubling down, on your business and your work, which is fabulous. But let's say like a couple years down the road, you've been focusing intensely on your business and it's where you want to be. You feel really good about it. And then you come up to breathe and you're like, wow, like I would really like somebody to share this amazing life that I have built. I want to share this with somebody. That's the type of client who then comes to me and says like, okay, I've been focusing on X, Y, and Z. I want to jumpstart my dating life. I know I could figure it out if I, tried a bunch of stuff, but I would rather just go to a professional so I can get as far as possible in the least amount of time and, get this sort of right so I can start getting in front of the women that I am most interested in, making sure I'm putting my best foot forward with the women I like. and I know how to form relationships. Because I think dating is a lot of practice. Like, you know, when you're like in the groove and you're doing it a lot, you like oftentimes feel pretty good at it. But then when it's been like 5 years or even, you know, a few months and you haven't been on a first date, it's like, oh, hey, how do I do this? Like, what's a first date like again?
Right. I think you're so spot on with it because I think it's like dating's like a muscle. And if you don't work it, it becomes like atrophied in a way where you kind of forget how to do certain things, especially in a time where things are moving so fast. Where in like maybe like 3-4 years ago, you might have heard of people sliding into DMs if you heard a story of like two celebrities meeting each other, or if somebody had talked about it, you would have been like, "Oh, that's kind of cringe" or something. And now it's more normal that most people are meeting on a dating platform. There's a lot of people, specifically over the pandemic, that have connected on social media. One of the things that I struggle with, and I know this is something I wanted to talk to you about, is I feel like I still feel shame's not the right word. I still feel kind of creepy when I'm like reaching out to a girl on Instagram because while Instagram obviously can be a great spot to meet people, I know it's technically not a dating app, so I always like find it a little weird for me to like slide into a girl's DMs that I maybe see that I thought was attractive or I thought that we had a lot in common. Like, what is the best tips for engaging in a conversation via Instagram?
So I'm a big fan of meeting on Instagram. I think Instagram's a great dating app. There are endless possibilities there, but there are different ways to go about it, and there are going to be ways that are more successful and then ways that are absolute no-nos. So blindly messaging women that you see a woman, you're like, ooh, she's attractive, I'm going to send her a DM, is not how I would recommend going about it. You need to qualify the woman first. So qualifying means you need to really look for three things in particular. One, does she look single? You can't always tell this from a woman's profile, but if you spend 5 minutes, okay, looking at her tagged photos, watching her story, looking back at a few posts, you can oftentimes suss out if there's a partner involved. And if you can't, okay, that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't move forward, but you know, take a little peek there. Second, does this woman live any place near you? Do you live in the same city? Do you live in the same state? Are you willing to start a relationship or conversation with somebody that lives across the country? But, you know, the likelihood of it working out is definitely less in that case. Maybe that's a deal breaker for you. Maybe it's not, but you should be aware of that going in. And then number two, what reason do you have to believe that you're compatible? Do you have things in common? Do you share hobbies? Do you share values that she's posting about her religion, or she's a huge foodie, or she also loves to travel? Like, look for things what is making you think that she'd be a good match for you? And if you can answer all three of those things, you're like, okay, I don't think she has a significant other. Okay, we live, relatively close to each other, as close as I need to be interested in, chatting with her. And yeah, we have X, Y, and Z in common. Like, this is why I think it'd be a good fit. Then, okay, you have the Dating by Blaine's check of approval. You can slide into her DMs. But then one step further, like, you're not just sending her a message, hey, how was your weekend? If she's an attractive girl on Instagram, a lot of guys are sliding into her DMs. It's just the reality of the situation. So can you reply to a story? Can you reply and give her a tip about someplace she is? Like, hey, I've actually been there. You should order the XYZ. Or, oh, wow, I'm actually going to Mexico City next month. I saw that you were there. Like, whatever it may be, have an interesting question. Have a value add. Think about what you're saying to her that is going to be unique and stand out from the 10 other DMs she's gotten that week.
And I would assume that the reverse would be true. Like if a woman is interested in a guy, I mean, I would think that guys get less DMs. An attractive
I think
guy
guys get approached less,
right
in general.
Right. But making sure that you're aligned with them and not just physically attracted to them, which I've made that mistake where I'll just look at a girl, I think she's attractive, and I'll say something and I get a reply and maybe that continues a conversation. But then I realize like after a few days of like chatting, I'm like, oh, I'm just not interested. Right. So I think what you said is really important to like make sure you're actually compatible and then like saying something thoughtful that gets her attention and actually sets you apart so that she thinks that you care. So let's take this a little bit further now. Let's just say I've slid into a girl's DMs and let's just say I said something really thoughtful. And let's just say, for instance, I'll use you as an example because I saw you today with your dog, right? Let's just say, hey, like your dog was super cute. Did you rescue your dog? Like, what's their name or something like that? And then you respond and you're like, get back to me and you're somewhat interested. And then I carry on the conversation. Like, what's a good next step like from there to like let that person know that you're not just like trying to make casual conversation, you're actually interested in getting to know them.
Like you're interested in them.
Yeah.
So dating apps or excuse me, Instagram is a little bit different than a dating app because on a dating app, this person is pre-qualified. They're on that dating app because they are looking to meet people and date. Instagram, you don't have that same filter already. So this person doesn't necessarily know you're interested in that. And you will likely need to build a bit more trust, especially if you're a random person. Like if you're just some totally random person, no friends in common, you're probably going to need to have a little bit of back and forth, forming a connection, building a bit of trust. But then I would just say be direct and go for it. Like, especially if you live in the same place. Like I know the best dog park in town, or I know a great patio, outdoor patio, Pups Allowed, where they have like great smoothies. Like, would you want to check that out with me sometime? Just being direct and asking for it. The way you get stuck in the pen pal cycle is when you don't ever just go for it. And that's a guy will be like, I'll get a DM and he's like, I need advice. You know, I've been chatting with this woman on a dating app or on Instagram for 3 months. And I'm like, what are you doing chatting with anybody that you don't know for 3 months before asking them on a date? When I'm saying build trust, create a connection, you can do that in a day. You can do that in a few messages back and forth.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why I think it's important to be unlike me and date people that are like in your area, because a lot of the people that I'm going out with just don't live here.
Where do you live?
I'm in Baltimore.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because you made a really good point that was like not only picking something out specifically about what that person's doing, you're trying to almost like, set plans with them to let them know you're interested in seeing them. Whereas like if I'm here and like it's just using you as the example and you're in Texas, I'd be like, yeah, like let's meet at this dog park. And you're like, oh, like you're in Baltimore, and then I'm like, well, I'll fly out. Then you're like, that's creepy. Goodbye. And that's kind of,
Yeah. It's way harder.
it's way harder.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's just say now we're like probably in the same space as online dating apps and Instagram. If we've gotten to the point now where that person knows that we're interested in them and we're having some dialogue about getting together. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see with your male clients that are maybe well-intended as far as like trying to either further the conversation, set up an initial date, set up a second date when it comes to like messaging online with girls?
Yeah, honestly, one of the biggest mistakes I see is texting and messaging too much, especially early on. If she's given you her phone number, if you've matched on the app, she's at least preliminarily interested. And you're a lot more likely to text yourself out of a date than into a date. So I'm a really big fan of like, you obviously need to establish some trust. You need to have a few chats back and forth, but then ask for the date, set the plan, go on the date. You don't need to talk every day until the date. You don't need to, keep the conversation going. Guys are always worried, well, I'm worried she's going to forget about me or like the momentum is going to fade. Sure, later on, after the second, after the third date, keep the momentum going with text to stay in touch because you've already created that connection in person. But you don't create true romantic connection via text. You do that in person. So you need to get to that in person time together first before you start trying to use text as a way to build momentum.
Yeah. I've had this struggle too, where you kind of, it's been a catch-22. It's like, there's been times where I have texted too little and a girl just thinks I'm not interested in her. And I just will end up like texting her at a certain time and then it's kind of too late. And there's times where I've, again, like texted myself out of a date where may have come across needy, but honestly, like, because of my schedule and I'm back to back a lot of days with clients and podcast stuff. So like a lot of stuff has to be kind of set in stone. And I remember having one of my clients, I'm fortunate to have like a lot of female clients who have lived life and that are married. And they're like, Doug, like, this isn't your business. Like you need to talk to women like they're women and not like they're your clients. And it shifted things for me because I wasn't as like direct and pushy, like, all right, meet me tomorrow at 7 p.m. Like confirm, like send you Cal invite. You know what I mean? Or I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, how did somebody know though? Because I think this is a mistake that a lot of guys struggle with. A lot of people struggle with is how do you know if you're texting like the right amount? Because I've often heard too that like if a guy doesn't text you enough, like it'll somehow make the girl seem not interested. Or if a girl doesn't text you back for a long time, it also can come across as her not being interested as well.
Yeah, well, one thing I would also just advice I would give to like everybody, men and women. It's like, stop reading into everybody else's text so much. And that's why I'm a big fan of just getting in front of each other. Like, see if there is a connection. Stop like dissecting every single word. Is he into me? Is he not? If he's trying to make plans with you, give him the benefit of the doubt and go out with him. And then you can make your decision about, whether or not it's a good fit. And that goes, both directions. I always tell my clients, when in doubt, match the other person's energy. So if you're worried that you are coming on too strong or texting too much, like focus on matching their energy. If some people like to chat more, like to your point, some women expect to have more back and forth and more banter. I do believe though, as long as I don't want to say the bare minimum because that's like sounds like you're just scraping by, but as long as you're like communicating that your enthusiasm for meeting up and you're making a plan and you're setting the date, and you can say something like, okay, I'll text you day up to confirm, like looking forward to seeing you. If it's Wednesday and your date is on Sunday, for example. So that way you're setting the expectation. She's not then wondering every single day from Wednesday to Sunday why you haven't texted her. And to be honest, either like men or women, if somebody can't if they need that much reassurance, if they need that much texting, it makes me think that there might be some bigger issues down the road, if like that's going to be a turnoff right in the first 2 dates or going to be a deal breaker.
I mean, that makes sense, and it's definitely something that obviously I will utilize as I move forward in my bachelor dating life, moving forward. And I think a lot of people like have a hard time with like locking in the first date, and then I think what people have even more of a challenge with is like, what do you do on the first date? Like, what are some of the questions you should ask? How do you start to build some attraction in person? Like, what are some ways that you help your clients build attraction with the person that they're with while they're out on a date?
Yeah, well, first dates, especially if you met online, in my mind, are mood checks. Like vibe check, do we feel compatible? Is there some sort of, you don't need fireworks, you don't need like massive sparks, but do I feel good face to face with this person? So you don't need to orchestrate some elaborate date and have some 101 questions that you're going to rifle through, to make sure that this person is going to work for you. A first date should really just be like, okay, do I feel good around this person? Did we have good conversation? And I think that's something actually both sexes get wrong, is they expect there to be this like, whoa, like that's the person I'm going to marry after the first date. And that's just not realistic. I always tell my clients and my girlfriends, if the first date was like good and you had good conversation, go for a second date. That doesn't mean like if you clearly weren't attracted to them, like maybe you don't go, but like if there is some attraction and good chats, like go again. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say not over orchestrating, just, where are you? What did you connect about on your dating app or online that you can chat about in person? I think a problem a lot of people have is they treat it like an interview, and that is not conducive to create like building attraction or anybody feeling sexy. So rather than, going in with like, okay, I need to find out these 4 things about her, like answer these questions, just relax, pay attention to how you're feeling, stay in the moment, and go from there.
I love what you said about it not coming across as an interview. That's actually something that I've been trying to implement more in the podcast, because like I know I gave you some stuff I told you I wanted to talk to you about, but I think sometimes if you're so like rigid on the questions you want to ask, you miss out on a lot of the organic opportunities. Like I honestly wasn't planning on talking about my life at all, but I saw that as an easy segue to maybe unveil not only your work, but maybe like the process of how you walk people through this. And then people who are listening to this, who I'm sure struggle with the same thing, whether they're male or female, like how can they like do a better job, or how can they implement what you're saying like into their everyday dating life or even their social life?
Yeah, and on that note, so because a lot of people fall into the interview style questions, and that's often just because they're nervous and okay, these are questions that will illuminate the other person, who they are. So I'm going to ask these things. Rather than just jumping from question to question, how can you pull on a conversational thread? So if you ask her about her dog, oh, she's a rescue. Her name is Dee Dee. I got her at Austin Pets Life. Oh, wow, that's amazing. What's like your and Dee Dee's favorite thing to do together? Oh, we love to go to the dog park. Okay, which dog park do you go to? Pull on a detail and ask a question related to what they just said. And you don't need to beat a dead horse with this. Like eventually topics are going to change and you're going to ask new questions. But if you can get 3 to 4 questions or conversational threads out of, a question that's going to be helpful for not just feeling like you're rifling through interview questions.
Right, because sometimes it can really bite you in the butt. And I think a perfect example I was thinking of as you were saying that, let's just say that like you and I were talking because it seems like you were describing your dog. And you're like, I'm like asking you about which dog park you take your dog to. And you're like, oh, I really don't go to the dog park because my dog tore its ACL like last week and it's been nursing it and it's been resting the next 3 or 4 weeks. And my next question is, so like, have you seen any movies, like good movies lately? And you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I just told you my dog like broke its ACL and you don't even like say anything. It's just,
Yeah.
right.
And I think that's because it's really hard for people to stay present, not to get too like meta on, dating or on, social media and things, but we're so accustomed to just sort of flipping topics and flipping energy and going so quickly that you're always, oftentimes people, especially on dates, especially if they're nervous, they're already thinking about their next question or the next thing they're going to say rather than truly listening to what the person is saying.
Right. I think a lot of it comes back to like self-confidence and knowing themselves, like knowing themselves and really having your own identity. Because I think a lot of times what happens is if you're basing your identity and your self-worth on that person going out with you again, then you're automatically going to set yourself up to lose. And this is something I have learned the hard way throughout the years. I've learned that when I just know that, all right, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, like I'm still going to be the same person, like I know who I am, that is going to be way more attractive to somebody because they're like, all right, this person's confident. He knows himself. He's like, I'm asking him questions and he's like, it doesn't seem like he's trying to just give me the answer that I want to hear. He disagrees with me on certain things. Like he's not just agreeing with me. And I think that also builds some attraction as well. And I would imagine that a lot of the people that come to you for coaching, they struggle with self-confidence. And one of the moments where they might get the most anxious is like going out on this first date. Like what are some of the things you help them do beforehand to give them a little boost of self-confidence?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you are going into a date looking for somebody else's approval, that is going to show through. And if you're looking for her approval or his approval, that tells that other person that basically that you're beneath them, that you are seeking validation through them accepting you. And that's just not attractive. And so I like to tell my clients, you should be approaching, every time you approach a woman or you are getting to know a woman or you're going on a date, instead of wondering, how can I impress her or is she going to like me? You should be trying to assess if she is a good fit for you. Does she share your values? Does she make you feel good? And of course, you want to, be putting effort into making her smile and creating a connection. But that is the number one thing that I see my clients getting wrong is not approaching relationships with, okay, does this person make sense for me? More like, okay, will they accept me?
Right. Absolutely. And I think what a lot of people struggle with when dating is they feel that the person that they're interested in is not approachable. They're intimidated by that person. And the easy example is you have a guy who sees an attractive person at a restaurant, at a gym, like out wherever, and they're just afraid that that woman is going to be closed off and not interested in talking to them. And I guess as a woman, and you have a lot of female friends, like what is something that that women can do that they're single to make themselves seem more approachable when they're out at a gym, they're out at a bar, at a restaurant, or wherever where they potentially could meet somebody?
Yeah, so a lot of them, because I hear that from men all the time, like she seems closed off or I'm worried about approaching her. And ultimately, I don't think it's really the woman's job to make herself, be a certain way so he can have the confidence to do that. Like that's not, I would tell my clients, like, who cares? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? She's a bitch and blows you off. Who cares? You're, like you said before, you're still the same guy, onwards. But as a woman, if you want to be approached, if you're single, take your AirPods out, your earbuds out, have your headphones off, look around, have your head up, don't be looking at your phone, smile at the people around you. And that's honestly advice for anybody, not just people who like want to meet men or women. Like I think everyone could benefit from being more engaged in the world around them. But that's definitely a way to signal to other people that you're open to being approached. And that's something I also tell my clients, the guys I work with. I say, look for a woman who's looking around, who you can make eye contact with, who, isn't engrossed in her book or in her laptop. Like, you're kind of setting yourself up for her to blow you off if she's clearly preoccupied with something else.
Right. I've heard you say that one of the best ways to pick up somebody that you're interested in when you're out in a public place is to kind of pick up on the vibe of the place that you're in and ask that person a question that relates to whatever place you guys are in. So, for instance, I'm in a coffee shop, again, using you as an example. Let's just say that you're in a coffee shop, you get like a matcha green tea latte or something. And I come up to you and was like, oh, like, is that the matcha green tea latte? And you might say yes. I was like, oh, I was thinking about ordering that. Is it good? And you're like, yes or no. And then I can then start to ask you more questions about like how often do you come here? And is that the method that you teach?
Yeah, I'd say look for something relevant. If you walk up to a woman in the coffee shop and you're like, so, like, where are you from? She's like, what? Like,
Right.
it's going to feel really random. So look for something relevant that you can ask her about or comment on. Yeah, so take your environment into consideration. What is she? Is she eating or drinking something? Is she holding something? Is she wearing something unique? Look for opportunities to strike up a conversation. And then running with your example, if she is like, yeah, this green tea matcha latte, it's actually my favorite. I basically have to have one every single day. And you can be like, wow, so do you come to this coffee shop every day or do you have any others in the neighborhood? But if she's just like, yeah, it's good, and turns back to her stuff, like whatever she's doing, probably not a signal that you should keep pushing or ask more questions. So asking like, a relevant question to start off with will help you get signal on whether or not she's open to having more of a conversation. Look at her body language. What are the words she says? Does she hold eye contact with you? Does she ask you a question back? That's like the ultimate green light.
Don't be like me and put your foot in your mouth by saying something. I have a dry sense of humor and I'm a smart ass. And sometimes it gets me in trouble because it's just like who I am naturally. And I remember I'm not gonna name this specific example just for sake of time, but I was in this coffee shop, had it going with this girl that I thought was attractive, and then I just said something like in a dry sense of humor way that she didn't pick up on, and she was like, all right, I gotta go, and like walked away. And I was like, oh, I was like, I just blew it. I was so upset because I think part of it wasn't just that I lost the opportunity. I was like, man, like, why did you do that? And I think that was a big learning experience for me because like I said, I love to learn more about myself. And I'm in this, people are always asking me, what's my big personal goal for this year? And it's to continue on this self-discovery journey and continue to learn more and more about myself so that I can continue to not only just like progress in my professional and personal life, but like eventually like meet somebody that like is aligned with where I'm at energy wise. So what about asking for the number? I think that's something that guys struggle with. I've fumbled it multiple times. I think people in general they have a hard time asking for the number. Like, what's your suggestions on how to do that?
Yeah, so it obviously depends on the situation you're in, but like let's run with the coffee house example. So you are chatting, you're getting good signal. She's asking you questions back. You're now having a full-blown conversation, chit-chatting. I'm a big fan of inviting her to do something. So you're essentially going to like invite her to give you her phone number. So, she's like, you say something like, I've been scouting out all the best coffee shops in this neighborhood, and my favorite one is on 10th. Have you been there? She's like, oh no, I haven't been to that one. You're like, we should go together sometime. And if she's interested, or like, I would love to take you and show you. If she's interested, like, oh yeah, cool, that makes sense. It's like, cool, let me grab your number. So you're not just straight up asking like, so can I get your phone number? You're giving a reason that you would need her phone number. It's getting her excited to do something else with you. And another like key thing that I think a lot of guys get wrong is, and this goes back to, like pulling on the conversational thread and being present, is you're not going to have 100% success rate with asking for phone numbers. Absolutely not. But if you get the vibe before asking that she's not interested for whatever reason, like she's turning back to her stuff, or obviously if she mentions a partner, that's like an obvious no-go, then just don't ask. You don't have to ask for everybody's phone number that you have a good connection with. It is okay to have a nice chat, especially if it's someplace that you'll likely see her again, and just be like, cool, well, it was like nice to meet you. I'll see you around.
I agree. because practice makes perfect. And I've talked about this before on the show that I was so mortified of like approaching girls throughout my like specifically like my early 20s into my mid 20s, and then I've gotten a lot better at it because of practice where I wouldn't just go up and ask for a girl's number. I would just go talk to girls, and it just was a skill, and it was like working out. Like once you start working that muscle got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, it got more stronger, more endurance and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of the same thing. Like I think I mentioned this about dating, where it just takes practice, and there's going to be some times you have to like let go of the expectation. And I think one of the things that trips everybody up when it comes to like risk, taking chances, is fear of rejection. And one of the things I often say is this, is that it's way better to be rejected by somebody else for having the confidence to put yourself out there than it is to reject yourself and tell yourself you're not even worthy of taking that shot. And I think that's just something that's really important for people to remember. And when it comes to relationships, I had Ryan Serhant from Million Dollar Listing on here, and he said something that has stuck with me since I interviewed him. And he said, the person who has all the power in any relationship is the person who cares the least. They have all the power. I remember asking him, I'm like, all right, but like, how do you control like not being too nice, not being a complete jerk, right? And this relates to dating, which is why I want to ask you this, is that I think there's a lot of nice guys out there that just end up messing things up because they are coming off as being too nice when they genuinely care, but they're trying too hard because they're not trying to seem like a jerk. But then the opposite exists where guys are like, all right, well, if I'm not going to be nice, I'm just going to be a complete jerk. And they go the complete other way and they give short one word answers and push the person away that way. Like, what are your tips for people when they're trying to be somewhere in the middle?
I would say most men naturally fall more one way or the other. It's not like some guy who's too nice ends up coming off like a total jerk because he's like trying to, be that way because he thinks women want that. And definitely the men I work with most have the nice guy problem. And how to not be too much of a nice guy is you need to respect yourself more. Respect and boundaries are the two ways that you are going to signal that you're nice, but you're not too nice. And so that means respect is, do you respect yourself? Do you, stick up for yourself? Do you expect respect from other people? Boundaries. Do you politely but firmly say no to things you don't like? Do you prioritize yourself? If you're only respecting other people, that is often comes off as needy and too nice. If you're only respecting yourself, that often comes off as narcissistic. But if you can respect both, then that is like the happy line in the middle where I feel like you're not going to be too nice and you're not going to be a dick.
Right. This is a great segue into something else I wanted to chat about, and that's like the friend zone. Because I think sometimes when guys are super nice and they're talking to the girl all day and they are like doing stuff for them and they're like constantly texting them and almost like giving them the emotional support that they would want in a relationship, the girl's like, sweet, like I have a cool friend and a guy that I can lean on for certain things. And the guy is like thinking he's getting closer to her romantically. And then like when he goes to like ask her out or make a move, like there's this rejection that comes and they're like confused. Like, well, what the heck? I thought she liked me, but really they've become friends. So how does somebody avoid being put in the friend zone?
Be direct about what you want. It's so simple. And the number one reason guys are in the friend zone is because they haven't expressed that they want something more than friends. So if you're doing all the things that a friend would do, or maybe all the things that you think, oh, this is everything a boyfriend would do, but you're not intimate and you're not, having a romantic relationship or physical relationship with her, you can't really blame her for assuming that you guys are just friends. But if you tell her like, hey, and it doesn't have to be one or the other, you might become friends with her and then realize, okay, I have feelings for this person. When you realize that, you say something like, I really value our friendship, but I've noticed I've started to develop more than friend feelings for you. Would you be open to going on a date and exploring that? And you're going to get your answer. If she says, yeah, you know what? Like, why not? Let's go on a date. Cool. You're going to, you're now at least having an open conversation about it. And if she says, ooh, I just thought we were good friends. I really like it the way it is. At least you can have an answer. And if that doesn't serve you, not invest more of your time there thinking she's eventually going to realize she's in love with you.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, I think you have to be direct. You have to understand like what you want out of that relationship, and you're going to find out, like you said, like right away when you ask like whether or not that person is interested in taking that next step. I think I already know the answer to this, but I want to ask just to make sure, just for my audience. I mean, it's 2022. Everything is online. Like, how do you recommend having these conversations that can, in many ways, make or break a friendship, make or break a relationship in person? Do you recommend always in person, right?
Always in person. If you can do it in person, same for asking women out. I get that question a lot like, oh, there's this woman on my intramural soccer team or in my class or in this community I'm in, and I have her phone number. Can I ask her out that way? And if you are able to ask her out in person and you can see her in person, then you should be doing that in person, not hiding behind the screen. And that goes for any sort of important conversation that you're going to have with anybody.
It's true. And I think it's hard though. I think a lot of guys and women, when they're looking to ask somebody out, they get intimidated because there's other people around, or they're just not sure what to say. And I think that's why it's important to do kind of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, is to not really focus on like asking her out, but to more or less talk about like what she's doing, like gauge some interest by showing that you're interested in like what she's doing, and just picking up on her body language. Where if you're like at this intramural soccer game and you're like, how do you think you played today? And she's like, fine. You're like, oh, like, you think you could have played better? I don't know. And then you're like, all right, well, she's definitely not interested in talking to me. But if she's like, I could have played better. Like, I went out last night. I didn't get much sleep. Like, how do you think you played? And she asks a question back. Then you're like, you kind of know that she's at least interested in having a conversation, right?
Totally. And then you don't ask if it doesn't feel like she's reciprocating. And then that's the thing that I think is helpful is if you do these qualifying things first to try and, truly look for signs that the other person is interested, and then you actually don't ask when you don't get signal that they are, you're actually going to be doing yourself a favor because you're going to be rejected less. Your confidence isn't going to take a hit. A thing that I think a lot of people get wrong dating is they spend time and energy on people that it's not going to work out with, rather than as soon as someone can be identified as, okay, this isn't going to work out, they aren't into me, no problem. I don't like that person clearly isn't for me because the person who is for me is going to like me back, and then spend their time and energy instead looking for people that either are attracted to them or could be attracted to them. So, yeah, spend less time on people it's never going to work out with and more time on people it could work out with.
I want to spend a few minutes talking about how do you qualify a person based on their qualities or the non-negotiables that you're looking for. And I think a lot of people, they get confused with non-negotiables and qualities of a person that they're looking for versus like givens. Like, easy example, I just want to find somebody who's like nice to me. Like, that's a given, right?
Yeah.
So like, what are some of the
That's a must have, not a nice to have.
exactly.
Yeah, so I think getting really clear on what must haves versus nice to haves are for you. So that is like just exactly what you said. Like, it's a given, it's a must have that you want someone who treats you with kindness, that's somebody that makes you feel good about yourself. But must haves are different for everyone. I work with clients who a must have for them is sharing a religion with a woman, or a must have is that she wants to have children or doesn't want to have children. So there are certain things that it is appropriate to have as a must have, but I encourage everyone to be more open to what their must haves are. So you might be surprised by ultimately what you're attracted to and what you like when you're open to it. So you might think you want somebody who has a really serious career and, high earning profession. And maybe that is a must have for you, but I think for a lot of people, if they're more open and honest with themselves, that might be a nice to have because they want a certain lifestyle, but they have a lot more people in their pool who could have other qualities that are going to make them compatible if they open it up to like, okay, he has a job, but like maybe his job isn't the most important thing in his life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because I think at the end of the day, you have to separate what you want for yourself versus what you think other people want, or what you think that other person wants for themselves, right? Because I think a lot of times we base our must-haves or our nice to haves on what I think is going to make me like get another date by what I say to that person or what that person's going to say to me, instead of, like we've talked about several times, like staying true to yourself, having like this unique level of self-awareness to be able to know yourself so well that you're going to be the same person whether or not you secure another date with this person or not. As far as like exclusivity, I think people probably struggle with this too, both men and women, when they're like, all right, I've gone out with this person for a month, gone out with this person like 5 times or whatever. When is the right time? Is there like a depth of a conversation people get to? Is there like something physical that happens that you believe that where it's appropriate to ask to be exclusive?
First of all, there's no right answer of
Right, for
like,
sure.
okay, you need to have this many dates or this amount of time. You can also never assume, like there needs to be a conversation about it before you make assumptions. But I think in order to be at a place where exclusivity is on the table, you need to know this person well enough to know their faults and know the things that aren't perfect in them and want to be with them anyway. So you probably aren't going to know somebody enough to really appreciate, their shortcomings until you've been on at least 3 or 4 dates with them, minimum. And at that point, okay, you can identify like, okay, I know that this person XYZ struggles with that or has these traits that aren't ideal and I still want to be with them. Okay, that's a point where I can talk about wanting to be exclusive with them. Because if you think this person's perfect and we're going to have the perfect relationship, there's no such thing. So until you can accept that that person isn't perfect, you're not in a place to be exclusive with them.
That makes sense. How do you feel about touch? Like when you're on like a first date with somebody, like, do you think that can gauge interest if a date's going well, if you try to like hold their hand afterwards, or you try to put your arm around them? I mean, or even eventually try to kiss them, or do you advise people to kind of refrain from that on the first date?
No, I think touch is a great way to create chemistry and set a vibe, like a difference between a friendship and a romantic relationship. Touch is a really powerful tool for that. So I'm a big fan of implementing it and working it in. Obviously, you want to start small. Like there's no rules around kissing or doing anything physical on a first date, but if you are going to kiss her, like the first time you have physical contact, no matter what date you're on, shouldn't be when you go in for the kiss. You should be building up. So that might mean, touching her hand or her arm as you're chatting, or helping her with her jacket and putting your hand on her back as you're getting up or going to the table. So building up to it, and then also not just, okay, I've done it, check that box. Okay, I did that one, check that box. Okay, how's she responding to it? When you lean forward, does she lean back? Not a good sign that she's comfortable with the physical touch. When you lean forward, does she lean into you? Does she hold her hand where it is when you put your hand on hers on the table? Those are signs that she's comfortable and you can escalate things.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice, because I think at the end of the day, that's like one of the things that's like stigmatized, right? Is like in a way like talking about like touch, and I think it's an important topic because obviously touch is very important in relationships, and I think without it, like it's really hard to be intimate with somebody. And I think, like you said, it's a great way to gauge interest, and also like being aware and understanding like body language, like you said, like if she's moving closer to you, if she's moving away from you, if she's opening up to you, like those are all like great signs if somebody's interested. I want to have some fun. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is like online dating profiles, and even now we're talking about Instagram profiles to like optimize it to make sure that you're setting yourself up to success. I do have Hinge. I don't use it. I haven't been on a online date and off of a dating app, and I can't even tell you the last time. Most of them have been on Instagram. So I'm gonna read a few of my stuff because everybody always makes fun of me for what I do.
Your prompts on Hinge?
Yeah, my prompts. So I write, the hallmark of a good relationship is accepting and supporting the other person in all that they want to be and do. Is that too corny or is that good?
I think that kind of falls into the given category. That doesn't tell me much about you. It doesn't make you stand out. Like, okay, a lot of guys that can apply to most guys or most people on the app. So I'm gonna say it's a no.
Fail. It's a fail. All right.
It's not a fail. Like I'm not gonna give you an F, but I'll give you a C plus.
That's I'll take it. It's passing.
Yeah.
And then it says, I go crazy for someone who laughs at my dad jokes.
I tell a dad joke. That is telling instead of showing. So you're telling her that you have dad jokes and you're funny. What I would rather see in place of it is a dad joke.
Okay. All right. So another C plus, I guess. I hype myself up by getting in a good workout.
Be more specific. What makes a good workout for you? I hype myself up by doing 100 push-ups and a cold plunge every morning. I hype myself up with 500 burpees. Like, what makes a good workout? Be more specific.
I always say my pre-date, this is kind of like half me, half joking. My pre-date night routine is like lateral raises, push-ups, and bicep curls.
See, that's like, I would rather have that. That like made me laugh.
Right. So that was fun, and the reason I share that is because I knew it was going to be helpful for people that are online, whether they're using something like Hinge, whether they're using like they're famous and they're using Raya or they're using Tinder, Bumble, like whatever app they're using to make sure that they're like putting in stuff that is intriguing for people. What about photos? What are some of the mistakes you see with people when they're uploading photos to their online dating profiles?
Yeah. Well, also just to be clear, when I'm giving you feedback on your prompts or like even talking about photos, I am specifically thinking about this from the lens of a man's profile, men looking to attract women. The reality is a woman could have an emoji instead of a prompt and like she's still going to get matches. Women and men face very different challenges dating online. And the challenge for men is getting noticed, standing out, and getting quality matches. And the challenge for women is deciphering good from bad because they have a lot of options. So, a woman's prompts, like I encourage her to be specific and write things about her that is going to attract the type of partner she wants. But the reality is, she is going to have to narrow it down and filter from her matches anyway. Whereas a man needs to stand out, break the ice, get her to smile so that he even gets a match. An online profile for a woman can be passable and she's going to have options. An online profile for a guy needs to be exceptional if he wants to have quality matches.
That makes sense. I mean, you're right, because I think, I forget, I don't know if I heard this on a podcast or somebody just told me this, but I think it's a lot easier for women to get matches online than it is for men. Like I think women get X amount more matches every day than guys because like you said, there's kind of more to choose from and they have a lot of power in this. So I guess maybe if you're just speaking specifically to a woman right now, you're working with a lot of guys. What are some of the qualities you're trying to get them to have? I mean, I know this is going to be very individual so that they are put in the great category when women are seeing them and not necessarily the good.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, back to the prompts, it's about being specific and speaking to yourself. So, the more specific you can be, like, okay, you like to work out. Great. So does like 90% of people out there. Oh, you like to travel? Like, whoop de doo. Who doesn't at least like pretend like they like to travel? What about that? Those, interests make you unique. So, get as specific and granular as possible because that's what's going to make you stand out from the pack. Like, if you say on a mission to like visit every national park in the country. XYZ is my favorite so far. Versus I like to travel. That gives her something to connect on. It's like, oh my gosh, I love that national park. I've actually also been to that one. Okay, I'm going to match with him. So you want to be as specific as possible to catch her attention and also just to be memorable, to have something that makes her remember who you are versus thousands of other profiles that she's looking at. And so for photos, back to, you asked about that before as well. It's about quality and clarity. So your photos need to look like you, obviously. If there's any question of like, okay, what does this guy look like? She's not going to match with you. It needs to be very clear. They need to be recent. The photos should be high resolution, not blurry, no sunglasses, no hats in your first photo. You can sprinkle those in throughout. I'm not saying you can't have a pair of sunglasses or you can't be wearing a hat in any of your photos, but those should be the exception, not the rule.
Right. And no shirtless pics, right? That's like a thing, right?
I honestly don't agree with that. Like some people feel strongly about that. I think like if you have a posed shirtless pic, it looks try hard. But if you are in an environment that it makes sense to have your shirt off in one of your photos, like you're jumping into a waterfall or you have a surfboard or whatever it may be, then I don't think it's like it's definitely not necessarily a bad thing if it looks natural. And, if you're in good shape and you want to flex that a little bit, why not?
Exactly. There you go. I love that because I think also like I think what people are maybe against is somebody just like taking their shirt off like in the mirror and just taking a random
like the shirtless mirror selfie.
Yeah. It's a no-go.
That one's a no-go for me. But no, I'm like pretty anti-selfie for your dating app profile. I say you have to have a good reason. Like the Taj Mahal better be in the background. You better be able to explain to me why that selfie needs to be in your profile. Because the majority of selfies I see, it's just like because, I didn't have another photo. And that's not a good reason to use a selfie.
One of the last questions I want to ask you, it's goes back to something that you posted today, actually, which was something that I was going to talk to you about anyway. And it was like, how do you date somebody where you think that they're like out of your league, right? And I think you see this a lot where there's people that won't ask that person out because they might think that they're not as attractive physically than that person. So they're like, well, they're not going to be interested in me. Like, I'm not as attractive. And they automatically just shoot themselves down and don't even ask. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And how can somebody change their perspective to ask somebody out that maybe they would have been afraid to prior?
Yeah, well, we danced around this earlier, but a law of dating is you will never date somebody who you think is significantly higher on the attractiveness or desirable scale than you believe you are. So if you think he or she is a 10 out of 10, wow, they're so smart, they're so cool, I'm really a solid 6. It is not going to work out. You will only date people as sexy as you believe you are. And when I say sexy, I'm not saying, physical appearance. I'm talking about how worthy you think you are, your sense of self. And so my advice for somebody who is like, oh, she's out of my league or he's out of my league, like I'm always meeting these people, they're out of my league, is spend some time leveling up. Level up yourself, invest in things you like, work on your confidence, do something that you love, get really good at it. Spend time understanding like what you bring to the table. And remember that whether, it's the most attractive man or woman you've ever seen, that's just another person. They go to bed every night, they wake up every morning, they poop in the toilet too. And the more you can, just appreciate that that's just another human being, the less I think you'll oftentimes feel like, wow, that person is so out of my league.
Boom. I love that. And so a follow-up question, which is going to be like the last thing I want to ask, has to do with that. Let's just say, okay, the person they've asked that person out, they have a date lined up, but they're still maybe not as confident as they'd like to be. And they're still working on their self-confidence. They're still working on their self-esteem. Maybe they're not happy with the way they look in the mirror. What are some things that somebody can do to kind of up-level their appearance, either before a date or just like within that day or within those few days leading up to that, whether it's wardrobe, whether it's a song they could listen to help their mindset? Like, what are some things that you found to be effective?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. It depends on where their confidence is lacking. But spend time doing things that make you feel good. So that might be working out. That might be listening to your favorite song and dancing around the room, or calling your best friend because they make you laugh and feel good about yourself. Whatever it is that makes you feel good, date aside, spend time and energy doing that thing. And then in terms of appearance, because you said, if you're not confident in your appearance, that's one of the areas that I tell clients this all the time. If you're not confident in your appearance, take action and do something about it. So if it's like your weight or you're not feeling as fit as you want to be, hit the gym, make it a source of confidence. That's something you can control. Work with a stylist or spend some time investing in your wardrobe, get a haircut. Go to the dermatologist, clear up your skin. There's a lot of little things that people can do to make themselves feel better. And not all of those things happen overnight, but life is a process. This is all, part of the process. So even if it's going to take you a while, lean into it and spend time doing it.
Right. I think there's something to be said for like making sure you're dressing to impress, because I feel like if you look like $1,000,000, that you feel like $1,000,000. Like I found that when I go shopping, like I go to Nordstrom's and I'll shop like maybe once every year, once every 2 years. So for people listening who are like, you shop at Nordstrom's, like, no, I don't go every day. I go out and I get what I need. And I can tell you that I feel so much better. Like when I am like in nice clothes that fit me well, it brings out like my shoulders or whatever, like whatever. Like, I work out for a reason, to make sure that I have broad shoulders, to make sure that I'm obviously fit, but to make sure I look good in clothes as well, I think is a main goal for people when they're exercising. And then like my haircuts, like I've definitely in the last like year or so gone to more of like a personal stylist. Shout out Bridget if you're listening to this. And it's been a game changer for me because now I have like another level of confidence because I'm actually getting my hair cut by somebody who styles men's hair for a living.
Yeah,
And
for a living. That's like her one job is to know how to make you look good. And that goes back to why working with a dating coach, like just like finding the right outfits or finding the right haircut, like you could do it. It's not rocket science, but you would spend a lot of time and energy and trial and error. Dating is the same way. And that's why you work with a dating coach because you don't want to spend the time and energy trying different things, maybe turning off women that you would otherwise be successful with if you were doing the right stuff. So whether it's dating or styling or fitness, leverage the professional. Value your time, value your energy, and seek help from somebody who does it for a living.
let's go. I think that's a perfect way to kind of end our chat. Blaine, this has been awesome. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this, whether they're a male, whether they're a female who's looking to, be better at dating or get back in the dating world, or maybe it's a parent who has kids that are struggling with their dating life, or they're trying to find their way in this crazy dating world that exists in a technology filled 2022, whatever it is. And there's going to be a lot of value that comes from this. If people want to connect with you online, they want to maybe watch your master class, they want to get coaching from you, they want to get one of your guides, like where's the best place for them to find out about all of this?
Yeah, you can follow me or find me on social media at Dating by Blaine. That's DATINGBYBLAINE. That's TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, or www.datingbyblaine.com if you want to check out my services and shoot me an email.
Perfect. And what I invite everybody to do that's listening is to share a takeaway, share something that you learned from Blaine, whether it was about something she said about like some of the stuff she does with the guys she coaches. Maybe it was something that she said about sliding into DMs. Maybe it was something that she said about building attraction or how to ask somebody out that is public, or how to be more approachable. Or maybe it was something that she said about me, because I thought that it was going to be, I thought it was very valuable to share some of my like experience with this, and like let you guys get like a in-depth view on like what I'm still working on as far as my dating life and how my own profile could get better. Whatever takeaway that you found helpful, tag Blaine, tag myself.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
Yes, we love feedback. And we thank you for listening to this episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst, and we'll see you next time.